Have you ever tried to make a change and didn't know how? In this episode, we talk about our favorite path to transformation, hypnosis. If you're interested in altered states or making massive moves quickly in your life, you're going to love this episode.
Hey, we're Brit and Chris Carmichael, and you're listening to the Elevated Life Podcast. Throughout the 13 years we've been together, we've never ceased in our endless quest to better ourselves.
We've studied top experts, philosophers, and gurus. After years of personal self-experimentation, we found the tools for shifting your beliefs, moving through fears, and developing a positive mindset.
If you're ready for a breakthrough, then you're in the right place, because we're here to empower you to take control of your life with simple mindset shifts that create radical transformation.
We'll be diving into topics like personal growth, health, philosophy, spirituality, relationships, success, and mindfulness.
So create some space for yourself and get comfy. It's time to become the badass you were born to be. So the first time Chris hypnotized me was in the very beginning of our relationship. It was one of our first dates, and I came over to his mom's house, and he was like, "Hey, can I hypnotize you?" I was like, "Sure, why not?" I am literally the guinea pig of life, and I will try pretty much anything. So except for tomatoes, I'm still
you with tomatoes.
I know. All right. Anyway, so I love trying things. I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And I remember sitting in his mom's recliner and laying back, and he started counting backwards from 10, and I, just felt really relaxed. Like I didn't quack like a duck or do anything crazy. And then he had me open my eyes and he said, "How do you feel?" And I said, "Relax." And I don't think it worked. He goes, "Well, why not?" And I said, "I don't know. I feel like I should be quacking like a duck or something." And he said, "No, that's stage hypnosis. I do therapeutic healing, like hypnosis." I'm like, "Okay, whatevs." And that was it. We never talked about it again. It felt really good. I don't know. What did you do? I'm still here 14 years later.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah.
But it didn't come up again until I went to see that psychic back in 2012. And if you listen to our past episode about how we got trapped on the mountain in Colorado and a near-death experience changed our life and set us on this path, I was so blown away by everything that she said that I had to bring Chris to experience that. And the first thing she said to him when he sat down with me was, "You need to get back into hypnosis, specifically past life regressions." And I just looked at him and I said, "See, I told you she was good."
Man, it was out of control. Meeting people in life that there's always somebody that you meet that has some extra kind of thing, some extra wisdom. They're going to share some big secret with you, but you really have to just be able to pay attention. And in that moment, and get those nudges. So many of us get nudges all the time. Go talk to that person, or hey, that idea that you have in your head, start that. And what we end up doing is not following through on the nudges. And then 3 months later or a year down the road, you hear about that exact nudge that you had, and somebody followed through on that plan, and then it turned out to be such an amazing time for them.
And it chaps your ass.
It really, you're like, what? You're like, no, I had that the whole, what? And then you did have it, but you let it go. And so many times our intuition and parts of us, you can call it whatever you want to, but that inner part of you that always knows the right thing and what to do and at the right time and who to talk to and where to be, that part's always talking to us. And so I think being able to follow those nudges, which is exactly what I had in that moment when Serena was talking to us. We'd never been to a psychic before. We weren't really doing any kind of woo stuff whatsoever, and having a person that comes out of the, just out of a crowd and tells you something specific is always something to just kind of dial into, because she wasn't selling that to me. It was just an idea that she had. And I tell you what, it's definitely changed our lives.
Well, I'm so glad that we're both crazy enough to just follow through with these curiosities. And talk about synchronicities. Teen Witch was one of my favorite movies.
Gosh.
Hello. And she went to go see Serena, the psychic. And I mean, I didn't even know that was her name. I just Googled a spot in Dallas, and it was a purple house, so I had to go. And it was just so magical. And, you know, the first thing she said to me was, honey, you have the gift and you need to buy yourself some tarot cards. I'm like, okay. Like, and it set me on this path of being able to, you know, be a psychic medium and really open up my third eye and access my intuition on deep levels. And I have so much to attribute to hypnosis being that tool for that experience. When I learned that you could use hypnosis for metaphysical, I was in on that journey with you of learning.
Oh my gosh, and I didn't even know that was a thing. I had no idea that we could use that we could start that. I mean, that idea didn't come until Brit was in a float tank. I mean, we never even talked about it like up until those moments. And to go back, you know, I got into hypnosis when I was 17 because I was in a psychology class. You know, I went to an all-guy school. And the psychology.
Oh my God, you're literally wearing a St. Mark's sweater right now.
There we go. So I went to
pride.
all guy private school, and I had 2 classes with girls at one part. So you know those classes were by far the most important. So one of those classes was psychology, and so I really threw myself into it. It was the mind is so fascinating, and when you think about it, whatever your mindset is how you're going to live your life. I mean, we've all met people who on the outside just had just the most amazing things, that all the dollars, they had the best partner, they look fantastic, they literally exude charisma, and then you talk to them a little bit deeper and their mindset's more this warped way, and it's all negative, and you realize that they don't enjoy all the fruits that they have. And so being able to really dial in on what your mindset can do is massively important. So I was loving psychology, loving all the ideas from it, but there was a line in that talked about hypnosis. Just on a random page, there was just one specific sentence that talked about hypnosis and how effective it was, and then it just stopped there. And so me being, I've always been the information guy. Yeah, I mean, I love to learn. It's one of those things because what you end up finding out is not only does learning expose you to the incredible ideas that so many people have. I mean, there's so many smart people in the world, and they write down their ideas. And so if you can absorb even just 1% of the genius of somebody else, I mean, think about how much time you've saved yourself and how much knowledge you can have just walking around knowledge. So I'm deep into psychology, and I know that I've got to look this up. I'm like, this sounds super cool. And I'd always been interested in what it takes for people to change. What does it take for people to transform? What is that difference that makes a difference to take someone from anxious or sad and depressed or whatever it might be into something where they're being able to have confidence, being able to achieve their dreams, just being able to go from, a crappy life to something that's incredible. There's so much power in that because so few of us actually live an amazingly successful life. A lot of us really live in this sort of mediocre state. We accept that that's just who we are, and we don't make a lot of differences because we don't know how. And so I went into the library at the school, and they had everything on microfiche. We had the St. Mark's library was just phenomenal. So I spent a lot of time in there just reading as much as I could. I had study halls and stuff, and I would just go in there and just read and trying to absorb more knowledge because it's such a shortcut. And so I'm looking at this magazine. I want to say it's called American Health. It was, I think it's now Health Magazine. It was like American Health, and they had statistics in there from one of the magazines on hypnosis. And it said that, and I don't remember the exact statistics, but it's it takes 7 years and however many hundreds of sessions, which with a typical psychotherapist or psychologist. And then it gave a few other examples, and it said with hypnosis, it would take 6 sessions, and it had a 97% effective rate. I thought, holy smokes, if you can shortcut a process down to 6 sessions, it was incredible. So I was reading on alcoholism. I spent my early years, let's say probably between 10 and 12, going to AA with my then stepmom. And if you've ever been to an AA meeting before, it's brutal. I mean, it makes you even look at alcohol for sure in a different way because there are so many people who have had incredible lives and watched them get destroyed, including them with their family, especially with the kiddos and their partner. It just, it can be devastating to some people who really abuse that. And so I spent several years going to AA meetings with her, especially during the summer when I didn't have school. We would go every single day. And so I knew how hard it was for people to overcome addictions, because during that same amount of time, almost every single person in the AA that we were in specifically relapsed. So, hey, I'm going along fine. I'm doing things, and then boom, they're starting over again. It's like right back to the beginning. And I felt such deep passion for those people. For one, I had my stepmom in my life who was struggling herself, and I got to witness that at such a young age that it put a deep impression on me that there are so many people out there that are struggling. There are so many people out there that are hurting, and if you're a person that's hurting, like you're not alone. Most people are hurting. And so fast forward back, I'm in school looking at this microfiche thing, talking about addiction habits and being able to transform the mind using hypnosis, and I was hooked. I was hooked. And so I picked up as much as I could read about it. But college came, and I spent time doing computer stuff, and I started looking into other things because, as a kid, your mind kind of wanders around. I definitely didn't know what my purpose or passion was going to be at that time, but it was something that deeply interested me because I knew that the mind could change.
Oh my gosh, like I feel so emotional just listening to that. Oh, like my heart just breaks because like if that didn't happen, like if your path wasn't laid out, you wouldn't be where you are today. Like having empathy and helping people heal, because the work that you do is just, thank you for my life, because although I chose to change, it's all the work that you do is your choice, but you've just given me the tools and the pathway. And I think that was something that, fast forward to thousands of hours of me being your guinea pig and practicing and healing my own traumas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you kidding me? Like high five, like go team. So I just, it's so funny because people that knew me before, it's funny, you always say, I love when people say that I've worked with them, like the person before, the person I used to be.
Yeah.
So before, and it's like you have like this rebirth of like who you really are, like without the labels and the traumas and the fears and the pains and all of that. It's like total freedom and confidence. And so I guess that's what I mean by before, to, I guess, clarify. But I digress. Like I was always frustrated with the people that saw me as that before version and then saw me afterward and was like, what did you do to her? Like it was frustrating because I thought, no, I did this. This was my choice. And that's the biggest part with hypnosis, is you have to have a willingness for change. And I think that always that curiosity has helped us to develop and dive into areas that we would have never even known about, like past life regressions and the opening up the psychic abilities, communicating with the other side. You mentioned I was in the float tank, and my biological father started speaking to me and said, hey,
who's passed, yeah. Biological who's passed.
He passed in 2008, and he said, hey, baby girl, I had to pass in the physical world to guide you from the spiritual world. And that was it. That was all he said. And I got out of that tank and I was like, what the hell just happened to me? Like, I want to know more. And then when I found out we could use hypnosis while you were studying so many hours, you were just like so many classes, so many lectures that you would be listening to around the house. And I just was gonna, well, hell, if you're gonna do it, we always are interested in each other's passions. So I tagged along in that learning experience, and hell, I was your guinea pig. So it was really incredible to see all the things that we could do with it.
Yeah, the float tank experience, and I don't know if it was the environment also, because the float place we went to is run by such an incredible guy. And I want to say,
yeah, shout out to Ray Thoma at the Float Spot in Frisco, Texas. This is not sponsored, but it was a massive part in our healing journey.
Yeah, float tanks are sensory deprivation. You basically get in an eggshell looking pod, and it's filled with water, and it's heated.
1,100 pounds of Epsom salt.
Yeah, 1,100 pounds of Epsom salt. So you're automatically buoyant. You float. There's no sinking, and so you're able to relax all of the muscles. The only time you've experienced this before is in the womb, and it's a really healing place. And the lights shut off, and you're in you can't hear anything because there's nothing going on, and it's complete dark, and you're basically feeling weightless. And so it's a space where you can definitely go into some trance states and have some almost mystical experiences happen.
Yeah, that literally was like a massive hypnosis state, just total body, mind, and relaxation, which is what hypnosis is. People think it's like, ooh, I don't know what's happening, mind control. Like,
oh my gosh.
And understandably, people have a negative connotations for witches, psychic, tarot cards, like anything metaphysical that, ultimately connects you back to your own power.
Yeah, that's all any of this is. Hypnosis is such a natural state, and by natural I mean there's nothing unnatural about it. We've gone in and out of this state every single day. As you wake up from sleep, you're coming out of the trance state, and as you go back into sleep, at night you're going through all the trance states, in the delta. And so when you think about hypnosis, the really easy way to understand it, aside from the sort of mystical stuff that Hollywood likes to do, where everyone's swinging a pocket watch, it's the easiest way is to think of it as brainwave states. To me, that's always the easiest, because we're typically in beta brainwave. We spend a lot of time in that. It's sort of the mind's real thinking. There's a lot of noise going on. Most of us stay in this a lot of our lives. And then underneath that, there's the alpha state. And the alpha state is when you're relaxed. A lot of people like this is a very creative state. It's a nice flow state. If you've kind of lost time for a moment, then you've experienced this on the highway before. Your mind kind of just zones out for a minute. So that's alpha. And then you have theta beneath that, which is a more deep meditative state. This is where therapeutic change can happen very rapidly. And then beneath that, you've got delta, which would be us sleeping.
We taught all about these levels in the meditation masterclass in the Elevated Life Club. And it was really, I think the students, the elevators, were really mind blown at the realizing that we live in that beta brainwave state. And we have to relax to access our intuition.
Yeah, and I think this is the most important thing. So how relaxed you are, we're going from full conscious mind wakefulness down to deep, not moving, paralytic sleep almost. If you're at the top of the pyramid here in this beta brainwave state, change is not possible. And it's because you are not relaxed enough. So when people are anxious or they're worried and their body is pumping out stress hormones, nothing can be changed. It doesn't matter how hard you try. It does not matter what you do. There will be no change. If you can get relaxed enough, what ends up happening is that you come at a place where change is possible. The problem is, if we are conditioned to worry, if we are conditioned to an anxious mind, we relax and still worry. And so that's why you see a lot of people, and what I've ended up figuring out a lot of times about alcoholics and other people who are addicted to a lot of different chemicals, is that they are in a place where they're running away. We use TV for that. Sometimes we use food for that. But the truth is, in that relaxed state, you can make a ton of changes. It can be so quick, you would think that there's magic happening. And I think to a lot of degree, that is the mysticism that is behind hypnosis. Hypnosis, the actual term, got coined by James Braid in the 1800s because hypnos is the god of sleep. And if you look at a person who is hypnotized, they almost look like they're just knocked out. The truth is, you're conscious the entire time. Again, you've been in that state in between when you're totally asleep and when you're totally awake. There's like that few moments we all get to experience. And if you've been there before, it is one of my favorite states, because you can imagine all sorts of cool stuff. Just being in that place is so relaxing and it's so refreshing. I love it. The dream state, that visual state, it feels so good. And you've experienced that so many times. And in that is the process where you can really open up and find that you are so much more powerful than you imagine. I like to think of hypnosis as, or the mind really, as the rider and the horse. The rider always thinks he's in charge, but truth about it is, it's the horse. So the rider to me is the conscious mind, which is where we love to use our willpower, which hardly ever works. If you've ever tried that, if you've ever dieted and then you smell like popcorn or something like that, it's like your body just automatically starts to crave it. And it's because the subconscious, or the horse in this example, is the powerful one. It's like also the iceberg. We talk a little bit is on the top, but the huge part of the vast amount of the iceberg is down at the bottom. That's your subconscious mind, and it literally is running the show. The problem with it is that I wish we could access it easily, right? That would be just awesome. Well, but then everybody could put suggestions in, and you don't really want the suggestions of everybody else. You want to be able to really do it yourself. And so when we're about 10 or 11 years old, you develop what's called the critical factor. And this critical factor makes sure that the information that you're accepting is something that is in line with your beliefs. So if you believe, for example, that you're ugly, and someone comes along and says, "Oh, you are so beautiful," your critical factor comes up and says, "No, I reject that. That's not part of my belief system." So as we become an adult, it's so hard for us to change things. Like once we get in a certain way, it's very difficult for us to pull out of that, because this critical factor is like the security guard to the building of our mind. And it doesn't allow any kind of intruders to come in, again, unless it aligns with our belief. So to change that hardcore belief system, and I'm sure you've seen people like this your whole life, where you give them the exact truth about something, but their belief is so powerful, they just automatically reject you. So that's happening. And so hypnosis is just a way to bypass that security guard. In other words, to become relaxed enough to drop us into a lower brainwave state so that we can start to change.
And that's the most important part, is that you are in control of it. So many people think that the hypnotist is controlling the other person. But the way that I would describe it is, you have the map, but I have the treasure. And it's like I get to be guided to that treasure, and it's within. Like, we've never been told that, we've never been shown that, and we've been able to do so many miraculous things. Like, it reminded me of the first time you worked with my mom after her stroke. She had no peripheral vision, she was terrified to drive, and it was just absolutely insane. After she opened her eyes, she looked at you and she said, "I haven't relaxed like that in 25 years.
Yeah, and how powerful it is. And we forget that, and that's why I love this method. You brought it up, because when I think about the average therapist, and again, disclosure, I'm not a therapist, medical doctor, anything like that.
Asterisk,
yeah.
Disclaimer.
But when I think about therapists and how long it takes, and how the therapist is the central key into the therapy session, it's always bothered me, because I've always thought that the individual is extremely powerful and always capable of doing incredible things. And if you start with that belief, it becomes really easy to see why hypnosis is such a fantastic art to remind us of that, because it is always the individual. It is never the hypnotist. The same reason why Brit was upset by people talking about the amount of change that she's gone through after spending countless hours in that beautiful state and getting the changes that she'd always wanted: to be more confident, to be more charismatic, to think in new ways about money, to be more relaxed and calm, to let go of anger, to forgive herself, to forgive people that have hurt her in the past, to just be better at being human, to live a better life, and to do it without effort. That's what I love about this method specifically, is because the amount of effort is very, very little.
Well, the best part is you don't have to talk at all. Like, it's all done within the visualization and imagination of your mind, because that's the most powerful tool that you have.
Yeah, so the client does not have to talk. The hypnotist does have to do the talking, though. But it's not in the same way. You know, it's wild what the mind can do on its own if it knows what to do. And so hypnosis is really just a directing of that. Brit mentioned it as being the map, and it really is. It shows you a lot of incredible things where you can go and make the changes that have always been possible, but then you didn't have the guidebook or toolkit or anyone telling you how. And I feel like that might be one of the reasons why hypnosis never became popular. For one,
It put a lot of people out of business.
The movies have for sure bastardized it a lot and made it this almost this taboo and almost like demonic looking type of thing, but it's so natural for us. We've been doing this for years. The Hindus were doing this forever ago. They would bring people to the temples who were sick and let them lie down on these like rocks, and they would be in the temple, and the people would get relaxed. They'd have them focus on their breathing, which is an easy way to begin to relax. If you are anxious, if you begin to slow down and focus on your breathing, you'll automatically enter those lower states. You notice that if when you get stressed and when you're anxious, you breathe so much up into the neck and up into the chest, and it's real short, labored breathing. But if you take deep, long breaths, your body automatically relaxes. All you're trying to do is communicate to the nervous system that everything is fine. And you do that when you breathe real deep, just like when you go to sleep at night. People breathe extremely deep when they go to sleep. So the more you want to relax, the more you just have to focus on your breathing.
And that's why yoga is so imperative to learning how to control your breath. It helps you to relax and to focus on your breathing throughout that whole practice.
So let's fast forward. We were at the float spot doing float tank stuff, spending a lot of time in the float tank. And the owner came up and he said, "Hey, someone left this CD here. Would you like to use it while you're doing?" And you do a hydro massage before the float, kind of get you prepared, relax the body a little bit. Then you go in the float, and you feel like just something floating in the wind. It's so amazing. And so he gave me this DVD to watch. Put headphones on. It was called HemiSync, and it's supposed to rebalance kind of both sides of the brain. And so I'm listening to this, and you're watching these kind of geometric spirals coming in. So we're doing that, and I'm like, man, this is really cool brain stuff. So it got me thinking back again about what I've learned about the brain over my life, and back to the hypnosis stuff. And so I'm like, I'm going to start looking back into that. Then I do my float session, and the first thing that comes out is a vision of me doing hypnosis with people. And I'm like, what is this? But again, you got to follow your hunches. And so I follow it, and I immediately just start signing up for things. I took as many classes as I could, instruction. I sought out the best teachers and learned from them.
And the oldest teachers, too.
Old teachers. I found information from guys who've long been passed now, who were just incredible at what they were doing, and they were doing it way before. I mean, these are the guys who pioneered a lot of what I do now. And I started just consuming as much. And of course, during the thing, this is it's not about hypnosis. It's how to do it. And so I always needed a partner. And so I'm like, "Hey, Brit, you mind if I do this stuff with you? Can you be my partner?" And she's like, "Of course, Brit always says yes." And so we started. And what we started to notice was that our life started changing. And it started becoming, if you caught our mushroom episode, where we talked about how much we saw ourselves change during that first mushroom experience, and how bad I wanted to be that person. I mean, I thought about it all the time, because it felt so good to be him, or to be who I really am, and away from who I've been sort of programmed to be, or away from who I may have thought I was, but to just be my natural self and be perfectly fine with being that natural self, despite what anyone else really thought. To be successful, to have good sleep, all that kind of stuff. And so it really interested me to start practicing. And Brit being my person, I was able to visually see what she was doing. Back then, Brit didn't hypnotize me because it wasn't that big of an interest. This was my thing. And so people started commenting on the changes Brit was getting. And you could tell the business started to succeed more. Just literally every single piece of our life started to get better. And I was like, I thought this stuff was going to be nonsense. I mean, the more you practice it, it still is, to this day. Even it's been, I've put my 10,000 hours in, and it's still to this day, it amazes me every single time, because the fact that someone can sit across from you a few feet away, never touch you, never have you really talk to them, and that you can come away from that and changed or feeling better. If you're in a bad mood, you feel better. If you've been restless, suddenly you're fine again. And it's like, oh my gosh, what have we discovered? And then I thought, well, I'm only doing this for Brit. What the hell? I need to start doing this for myself. I'm like, what? And so I started making audio tapes. I started recording myself doing hypnosis on audio tapes, and we started listening to that every single night. And we did it for months and years. And it began to recondition our minds completely, because we were in a state where we were really negative back then.
We were going to change our last name to Heartless. I am literally looking at the broken heart tattoo that we got at our wedding, because we were in such a protective, angry state.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think that we had been hurt, especially probably in relationships. And that we weren't doing the things in life. We weren't following, what we really wanted. And it wasn't because someone had necessarily forced us to do that. It's just that's what we were doing. We didn't know there was more. We didn't know there was better. We didn't know that life could get good. You just you grow up a certain way, and you just started accepting wherever you're at. And you're like, well, this is just normal. And it's all that other stuff is for the other people. And you don't realize you're the other people. I mean, it's just, everybody's the same for the most part. There some people who obviously have, great physical abilities, some people who are super smart. But for the average person, most people are average. I mean, that's why it's called average. And those average people can be extremely successful, and I don't just mean monetarily, I mean just enjoying life, where you wake up in the morning and you feel good. Like, it sucks to feel like crap. I hate it. And so when I wake up, I want to feel good. And if there's something that I can do to make me feel good, that's what I want to be doing. And this started allowing us a very simple, again, I'm listening to an audio tape. I'm not doing anything. I'm not talking about my past.
We're not having to run a marathon.
It can't be easier. We got in the bed. We put the headphones on. We played an audio. I want to say my audios typically range between 12 and maybe like 20, tops 25 minutes. So you're talking about putting in, let's say, 15 minutes a night. I mean, it's a joke. And how much people started commenting on us. I mean, I remember I went and visited my old business partner who I hadn't seen in years. He goes, "Dude, what the hell happened to you?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Because once your mind changes, you forget how you were. You totally forget.
It's so hard to think back of like being an asshole. I'm sure everyone on the receiving end is like, "Oh, I remember."
Yeah.
But like, honestly, and choosing to, look at things on the bright side and choosing positivity, kindness, and love. It's like, huh? I was mean? Like, who was that person?
And it's because once your mind changes, in the same way, if you've ever had a goal that you were super motivated, or you had an item that you really wanted to buy, or something that you just couldn't stop thinking about, it happened. You never thought about your life without it. And so once your mind changes, and especially once your subconscious mind changes, where that really controls the show, once that thing gets excited about what you're doing in your life, it just seems like I've constantly thought that it's possible that our subconscious minds, or infinite intelligence, I don't know what you call it, I feel like it talks to each other, so that whenever you are aligned with your beliefs and you start to align with your actions in the same way, and that's how we use hypnosis. We just find something that we're motivated about, and then we condition our mind to be able to go get it for us. And it's effortless. It's if you can change by just pressing play on your phone at night with the headphones on, I mean, come on. It was a joke. And so I started seeing people. I'm like, I got to get more. I took every advanced training I could find, and I started to read every book. And what I realized is that books are expensive whenever you're looking at old books that are out of print. And I wanted all these old books that I couldn't find. And so back then, I started seeing people because I wanted books. I mean,
it was the best. Like, talk about bartering. The psychic told me one time when we went back, she was like, "Honey, if you don't start charging for your tarot readings, the angels aren't going to give you any more information." I'm like, "I'm sorry, what did she just say?" And so that immediately made me realize we have to exchange energy. And I think that whole idea led you to say, well, I would love to work on people in exchange for books. And I thought that was the most creative and clever way. Like, so many people create so many obstacles in their mind about why they can never get started, or they don't have enough money. But if you use your mind creatively, you can come up with it. I mean, sure, you could have just bought the books, but you wanted to be able to use that to help other people, and also to explore other people's brains other than my own and your own.
Yeah, so it gave me, I definitely used it that way in the beginning. And I think, I told people, like, hey, I'm just starting to understand this. I need more warm bodies to work on, because
with more different types of problems.
Yeah, and so I literally just called up all of my friends that I could and said, hey, I'm learning this. If you want to be a part of it, I would love it. In exchange, you'll need to buy me a book off this list. And that way, like, there is an energy exchange, because I knew what I was going to be basically handing them. There was going to be a lot of opportunity for them to make their own changes. And all I want to do is kind of take them to the launching pad where that is possible. And so, I rember everyone just coming in, and it's weird at first, because having people close their eyes and, relax and do all this stuff. And it's strange for you. So I had to overcome, in that beginning part, my own fears. So what did I do? I made a hypnosis audio for that. And then suddenly it didn't bother me anymore.
There's an audio for everything.
Yeah. You can, your mind is only limited by what you limit it by. It's only through your own obstacles and obstructions that you can't do stuff. And so I kept just trying to push the envelope. So most of the stuff I do at this point, besides what I learned in all those trainings and from the people who've come before me, but it's all been an experiment, and I'll come up with new stuff all the time. And Brit is always willing to, try it out and kind of figure out, is that the right wording, or is that, am I taking you to the place where do I need to change it a little bit? Is this more powerful? I'm really able to figure that out. And being able to do that for people has been something that it's been my calling.
Well, that's like exactly what makes the Elevated Life Club so different when we teach our master classes is we guide our elevators through 3 meditations that actually create the subconscious change. Because how many of you have signed up for classes and they teach at you and you have the bullet points and the cute workbooks like we've got, but like you kind of walk away and you're like, yeah, I know that, but nothing changes. The elevators experience massive changes because we go through these meditations together and help you go to the place where the change is possible. So not only are you equipped with the analytical knowledge, your subconscious mind is in the space where it needs to create those changes, so you start taking the action.
Yeah, and you've noticed before, if you've ever tried to change, or you've gone to seminars that, the guys didn't know any kind of hypnosis or anything like that, you're only different, or you're only doing new habits for a short period. And it's always because your subconscious mind still knows that you really think, that you're that crappy person. And that's why we don't get the changes. That's why people go to real estate seminars, but they never actually do a real estate deal. There's more people that sign up for self-help things, but they don't read the books. It's just a good idea. They're like, oh man, I'm going to brute force willpower that. And that, what we found, just doesn't, if it does work, it's for a short percentage of the population, and it's not fast enough. I don't want to stand in the mirror and do affirmations for 6 hours a day until I start to feel it, because repetition does work. I mean, repetition is definitely one of the ways that you can bypass that critical factor. You won't accept it the first time, but after time, it becomes normalized. I mean, you see the media abusing that all the time. On every news channel, they say the exact same words, and suddenly you start to use it in your speech.
It's called new normal.
Yeah, it's called normalization. And, that's just one of the techniques of psychology and hypnosis is normalization. But for you, that's going to take forever. Forever. And I don't want to do that. Like, I'm not here long enough. I don't have enough years here to spend my time doing that. And so I just really feel like this is, for us, it's been such the shortcut. I mean, it's just been such a shortcut.
And in the beginning, it wasn't like it was an experiment, and it wasn't easy for me. You can say purple diamond and I'm out, you know what I mean? But in the beginning, I remember saying a lot of the times, like, I only see black. I don't see anything in my mind. Like, you're having me visualize and picture things, but like, it's black. And what we learned is seeing black is something. It just takes time to develop and strengthen that muscle. It's like going to the gym and thinking you're going to like bench press like the whole damn rack. Like, you have to start slow and you have to build up that experience, because focus and concentration, I mean, it's exactly what meditation is teaching, how to focus your mind, because the more you can focus, the more information from the inside you can start to pick up on.
Yeah, and meditation and hypnosis are very similar. Obviously, the difference is the fact that in one of them there's another person, and truthfully, to some degree, all hypnosis really is self-hypnosis, because you are doing it to yourself, but you're doing it with some sort of intention. Whenever I actually do meditation, and when I do what's called true meditation, besides where I'm counting and doing things like that to relax the mind, there's not an intention. There are so many people who use intention in meditation, and I don't like it that way. And the reason why is because when you set an intention, all you're doing is talking about what you desire. And the problem with that is all desires lead to suffering. And when you meditate, what you're doing is experiencing the present moment. That's it. There's no other things to it. It's an deep experience of the present moment, which means you're not living in the past. You're not thinking about the future. If you have a desire that's future-oriented, you're thinking, I don't have what I want right now. In the future, this is what I want. For the most part, I'll be unhappy until I get it. And again, the future does not exist. We only live in the present, and then in the present. The future is only something that we construct in our mind. And so hypnosis is a way to do the achievement levels and to start to understand how to get into meditative states. The definition of hypnosis that I think is probably one of the best is Dave Ellman's definition, who was a 1930s to 1960s guy who would travel around and give hypnosis lectures to dentists. Phenomenal guy. One of the best hypnotic inductions I've ever seen is coined from him, the Ellman induction. And he said that hypnosis is the bypass of the critical factor of the conscious mind and the establishment of acceptable suggestions. So think about that for a second. The bypass of the critical factor, like I've talked about before, the critical factor is just something you developed when you're 10 to 11. That's the security guard to the building of your mind. So hypnosis bypasses that and then establishes acceptable selective thinking. So what's happening is your subconscious mind, or your thinking here, is giving you a lot of negative crap that you don't need, that won't help you and won't benefit you on the road to your goals. And what hypnosis does is wipe that crap out and replaces that crap with the kind of suggestions that would actually help you achieve stuff. For example, if you're going to go into a job interview and your whole idea was, I had really shit sleep last night and I don't like myself, I probably won't get this job, I don't look good, I don't have anything worthwhile. When you walk into that job interview, you're going to say that all over yourself. No matter even if you open your mouth or not. It's going to come out in the way you present yourself and the way you stand and your body, everything. With hypnosis, you wake up and you think, man, I was relaxed because I didn't worry all night long. And now I love myself. This is going to be a fantastic job opportunity. Hell, they're probably even lucky to have me there. Now, it's not what you say with your words, but that's how you show up. That's how you feel about yourself. And so you start to do better. It's not that hypnosis suddenly makes you better. It's just that you start to think the ways that you've always wanted to think. Not the negative programming, not the I hate myself, not the self-inflicted nonsense that so many people do. And they just criticize and they just burn all the bridges to any way that leads them to where they want to go.
I'm super curious, are there any areas of hypnosis that you are wanting to explore or haven't been able to test or?
I really would like to see. They were already doing, anesthesia stuff where they're doing amputations forever in the 1800s, and they really started doing it even bigger during the World War II. And even the American Medical Association in 1958 started using hypnosis and use it medical. They gave proof that was just fine to start using. So that's interesting. The fact that we can possibly control pain, that's very fascinating. Sports hypnosis is something that I love to do. I love working with athletes because when you get to the top echelon of sports, for a lot of times it's physical stuff. Can you jump high enough? Can you run fast enough? Like that's something that you have to overcome through a lot of training. But the mental aspect of the game, when you get to that top 1%, it's mental. It's nothing else. It's just mental stuff. It's just how you think about yourself, how long you hold negativity in, if you miss a shot or you miss a putt or, whatever game you're playing. That is something that I've been fascinated about, but I've worked on. The thing that now interests metaphysical stuff I've already worked on with you. There's a lot of intuition. When Brit came out of that float tank talking about her passed away dad, they'd have a conversation. And then she looked at him and she says, "You think you can help me with that with hypnosis?" I was like, well, hell, probably not, because it sounds fishy to me. But I'm willing to try it. I'm never not down for the experiment. And if Brit will be the person, I'm always down. So yes, of course, let's do it. And he just started talking to her more. She started getting more messages. We figured out different places that we could go, and we designed places in Brit's mind that she could go to have conversations with him and to get those kind of messages that she received in the same way in the float tank. We basically created the float tank, but inside her mind, so she didn't always have to float. And it didn't always have to take as long, because sometimes you don't have an hour or 90 minutes to spare. You only want to do it for 15, and that's as good as it's going to get. And now at this point, what I'm interested in is probably more on the outskirts, outside of the confidence and forgiveness and all that good stuff and past life stuff. That gets boring after 4 or 5 sessions, because everyone gets killed or shot or horrible. If you lived in the 1600s, life just sucked. You had no air conditioning. You're getting kicked by horses. I mean, it was terrible, right? The thing that interests me now about the mind is actually what causes a person to remember or forget things. So in some way, amnesia interests me because I feel like that's a phenomenon that obviously is occurring. I'm also interested in other kind of healing modalities. Maybe probably stuff I've never thought of before. There was back in the 1770s, who hypnosis really gets popularized by an Austrian named Anton Mesmer. And if you've ever used the word mesmerized, that's from him. He figured out or thought that when he cut open a patient's vein and let it bleed for a moment, and then he held magnets over it, that it would stop the bleeding. And so that's what interested him in what he called animal magnetism, which became mesmerism, which is really how hypnosis got popular, because a lot of people started using his techniques, using his suggestions. He would suggest things as he held the magnets. He later found out that you could just use a stick to do it, and then it became magnetized rods that people would come and visit him for. And so they've done so much stuff as far as the medical things go, but I'm always interested in healing. A lot of it seems to me, as when Ben Franklin ended up going out to see Mesmer to see if what he was saying was BS, because all the French doctors were hating him because people were leaving their practices and going out to see him doing this mesmerism. Ben Franklin went out there and visited him and said that the rods and stuff were total BS. What really was working, if anything, was the suggestions. And so I'm interested in what are other natural modalities to heal. We can already do a lot of the trauma stuff that's fairly standard with hypnosis practice. We can already do all that but I'm interested in how the mind works with amnesia.
Yeah, I think it's so crazy. As you were talking earlier, I was thinking you always like to shortcut and create your own method. And as we shared in our last episode about being plant-based and our weight loss journey, we found a method to creating that health with the food that we were eating. And then there was a method to our mindset. And then there was a method to this and that. And we've created all these different methods that have been super effective. Now, I'm not saying that they're for everyone, but there are definitely pieces of that puzzle that everyone can implement in their life that will take you to the next level wherever you're at.
Yeah, that reminds me too. There are, talking about things being for everyone, there are two categories of people who hypnosis is not for. The first category is people with schizophrenia. A lot of times they don't use hypnosis in that because their minds are a lot of times more fragile. And people who do hypnotic trances aren't always excellent at navigating that. But some people have had success, but it seems to be hit or miss from the literature I've read. The other group, so if you're not schizophrenic, the other group is people with extremely low IQs, the elbow lickers of the world. Those are the kind of people that also have difficulty with hypnosis, and it's mostly because they can't concentrate long enough to really enter the trance state with any kind of regularity. And so it's only those, because people always wonder, well, can I be hypnotized? Can you hypnotize me? If you fit in those two categories, I cannot. If you're anybody else, for the most part, if you can fog a mirror, then you're hypnotizable because you've already done it. You've done it while watching TV. You've been in a movie. You've probably had sex before where suddenly, all of a sudden time was gone. It was just you kind of lost in that moment. And that's the trance state that we're talking about. Of course, like I mentioned, the going in and out of sleep, same way. But a lot of people wonder, what's going to happen? Am I going to fall asleep? Are you going to control me? And it's always fears. The only thing really in life that stops us are our fears. And the more often we give in to them, the more often we reinforce that deep belief system that that's what controls our lives. Hypnosis, same with meditation, is about empowerment. It's about realizing that there are a lot of changes that you yourself can make. I realize the establishment a lot of times doesn't want you to know that. Of course, there's a lot of professionals, a lot of people making good dollars off of other people's problems. And I've always been interested in just the healing side of it. I've always been interested in people trying out ways that are more natural. Obviously big pharma has been an issue. I mean, it's been a big issue. There are a lot of people who are hooked on a lot of drugs, that don't function. I just have a lot of issues in their life, and my heart goes out to anyone who is, has had someone in their life. I've had people in my life go through that experience. It's difficult, but also realize that that's a situation as it was for me to step up and be the healer. if you want to be somebody that helps somebody, look at the pain in your life. Maybe you've experienced, maybe someone around you's experienced. Like, look at the stuff when you're thinking about a business, when you think about what you want to do, it's always, what do people need? It's not always just like, what do I want to give them? I would have never guessed that I would do hypnosis with people. That absolutely sounds ridiculous. I mean, what in the world?
I remember watching Penn and Teller's bullshit on life coaching when I was 18, a senior in high school, and thinking, what? Who needs a life coach? And now I'm a freaking life coach. So it's so funny how those nudges have always been there along the way.
When you get the nudges, you just have to listen to them. And it doesn't mean you go full force and you go bananas. If you're that kind of person already, fine. But just try it out. We dismiss so many of the excellent things in our life because we don't understand the messages. And they're normally a lot more obvious than you'd think, if you'll just be there to listen. And remember, when you're in the beta brainwave state, you're not listening, you're thinking. And if you're thinking, no change is happening, how is the mind that created the problem going to be the mind that solves the problem? We need to relax enough so that the subconscious can come alive, can get excited and emotionalized, and then we can have the suggestions that are important to us fall in. So often, many of us have emotionalized, traumatic experiences in our lives, and we wonder how we get so scorned in love. But if you've ever been in that breakup moment, and you've had a person yell at you, when a person yells at you, it puts you into that hypnotic state for a moment because your neurological system goes, oh my God, what's going on? Oh. And then it bypasses that critical factor. They're already somebody you trust, so you're automatically in hypnosis with them. And they fire in this suggestion of, you're not lovable, I never loved you, you're ugly, I can't wait to be with someone else, you'll never be a success, I cannot believe I spent the last few years of my life being with someone as stupid as you.
And if that's you, definitely go back and listen to one of our first episodes on how empaths attract narcissists, because that sounds exactly like that scenario.
So what ends up happening is you accept that suggestion. And the danger of accepted suggestions is that they change your belief systems. And those belief systems determine how you think. And how you think determines what you do. And what you do determines how you live your life and reinforces that original belief. That is a vicious cycle. If you go through that cycle, you can easily see how people become depressed because we get on a thought loop. And what we have to do is break those loops. They're all breakable. There's not a thought loop that's not breakable. You know that because when you were born, you didn't have the thought loops. They didn't exist. It was something that either someone gave you before the age of 10 or 11, or it's something that you've given yourself through repetition, as we like to call it, habit. And so if you have those thought loops that have been plaguing you your whole life, if you don't know that you have them or not, spend some time sitting, find out what you're saying to yourself. Start to listen. Just spend a little alone time, away from people. What's the predominant thought that starts coming up? Those are the thought loops. Find out what happens before you enter a building or before you're going to go somewhere. Find out before you go to approach somebody, before you go to talk about money. Find out what those thought loops you're telling yourself are and make a concerted effort to start to break them. You have to be relaxed to break them. Either that or you have to have a really great authority figure tell you and repeatedly tell you until your belief is replaced. There's a couple other factors, but those are the two fastest and biggest ones. Change is possible for everybody, but you have to want it. Hypnosis is a consensual state. Brit at the beginning of the episode talked about our first meeting and me saying, hey, would you like me to hypnotize you? I asked Brit in that moment for total consent. It's not, hey, I'm going to hypnotize you against your will and I'm going to make you do things you don't want to do, because that doesn't work. We do in life the things that we want to do. And so if you're not doing the things in life that you want to be doing right now, it's because of a belief system. There's something else typically holding you back, and this is just the gateway to kind of figure out what in the world is going on, or just to replace it. You can do either one. To me, the what doesn't matter. I want to get straight to it and just make it work. That's why Brit said, I don't need to have people talk to me. It's not about what happened when you're, 6 or 7. It doesn't matter because you can replace the thought loop. If you replace the thought loop, a lot of times the other stuff just kind of works itself out. The mind starts to figure out, oh, this is what they were wanting, not that same crappy pattern that's been ruining their lives for so many years. This is why it's so powerful to me.
Yeah, the mind is a programmable computer, and what we've never been taught is that we have the ability to change the narrative. Just like when AOL 2.0 upgraded to 3.0, everyone threw out the old disk, put in the new one, and upgraded it. It's as simple as that, but no one's providing. Well, I say no one. There are people like you. Thank goodness for, shout out to all the healers out there sharing their wisdom. And listen, all of you have wisdom. I think everybody should have a book because there's some kind of experience that you've gone through. Like Chris said, pay attention to your pain. That's the wisdom that you have that you can help others on their path of healing.
Is there any other area of hypnosis that you want to explore?
Tantra.
Sex magic.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think, we've always talked about how, orgasms on command and without even having to physically touch you, but just being able to do that with your mind. I think that's super fascinating.
Yeah, if you can create, again, if you've created negative states in your mind, you can create positive ones, and in the same way, you can create pleasurable ones. And I've never found a person that said, man, my life has been crap this last week. I experienced so much pleasure. And I felt so good the whole time that it was terrible. That's never happened. I've heard the opposite a lot of times. And so I think adding in, and it makes people uncomfortable for some reason. Sex still makes people uncomfortable. It's still a topic that so many people are freaked out to talk about, to even think about pleasuring themselves or opening up about that. And it's a deep connection. I mean, it is deep, deep. And so being able to use your mind, and luckily for hypnosis, I learned one of the most important lessons that I've ever learned about women, is that men typically are very attracted to things or aroused by things visually. Our visual compass is a lot of times what we navigate by. And for women, so much of it starts in the mind. And so if you can help your partner to relax, if you can help your partner to feel confident about themselves, it becomes a different kind of bedroom life. It's one that you look forward to, that you enjoy beyond something that's supposed to last a few minutes. This is things that last much longer, that develop and cultivate love instead of just sort of a lustful
intimacy.
Yeah, deep levels of intimacy. And I really feel like that's something, we've been working on a lot with hypnosis, just wondering how can we push the envelope? What more can we do? I feel like a lot of people could sort of give up early. I want to test the limits of this thing. Like where can we really go with it? I feel like the amount of people we've had feedback from describing about how their love relationships have changed once we've done some of this work is just, it's having when you think about your own personal mastermind, when you think about the person in life that's going to cheer you on besides yourself, obviously you're always the first person, but your partner. Your partner is that, is the ride or die. It's that person, and being able to offer them a space where they feel relaxed, especially while in the bedroom where most people have huge hang-ups. Again, back in those early years, you get those huge hang-ups about what you hear, about what people tell you, about your belief system. And it manifests into a relationship that doesn't bring out the kind of nurturing and love that, both people deserve. I
know. That's why we did one of those master classes in the Elevated Life Club on overcoming sexual healing and shame and trauma, because as we start to open up and share our story and get more vulnerable, like #MeToo is so rampant, and so many people have experienced this. And that stems into all kinds of physical and emotional and mental issues in their later life that started at a really young age that maybe they did forgive, but there's still a subconscious belief connected to it.
So you're reminding me of how I used to do hypnosis in the beginning. And the way that I started doing it, the way I was trained to do it, was a lot of people don't know their problem. They don't know where it originated from. They know how they feel. They can see how the symptoms have manifested, but it's not obvious to them always where it started. Some people know it, a lot of people don't. Or a lot of people don't know the first one. And so when I started doing hypnosis, what I would get a person to emotionalize an experience. I'd have them think about what it was that made them anxious or afraid. I don't do it this way anymore. I used to do it because it's very effective. We can go right to the moment, So remember, your subconscious has all your memory stored. It's like a big filing cabinet. So you can go back to any point or time in your life.
Or lives.
Or lives, which I did not know was a thing for a lot of years until a lady spontaneously went back to a different life. I could not figure out what she was doing. And then as she comes out of the trance state and we're talking afterward, I'm reorienting her basically to regular life. She's describing to me that she described herself as a man in a different life, and I was blown away. But typically the way I would do is I get a person to emotionalize an experience, get them to feel it, to wake up the subconscious mind, and then I would have them go back to that experience. And, and they would be describing the experience as the child. And that always fascinated me because what I thought, or what I still think, is that whenever we experience a particular time in our life, if we had not gone back and made changes to that experience at an older age, we remember it from that age. So if you had something happen like 5 or 6 years old that was huge, a lot of kids had like stuff that happened in second grade where they stood up in front of the class and everybody laughed at them because they said the wrong answer, they farted, or who knows. And everybody laughed at them and they emotionalize that. It gets locked in there, and suddenly their mind tells them every time they stand up in front of people, don't do that. We're not going to get up there. So you get sweaty, you get clammy, your stomach gets queasy. The subconscious begins to send signals to the body that something's wrong. And so, we stop. We go in fear. We don't make that phone call. We don't take charge of our lives because those fears come up in the subconscious mind. If you've ever had that happen to you, is way powerful. I mean, it'll make or break you. I mean, it really will. And once you learn to harness it, and once you learn, how to use it better, it becomes phenomenal. So I would regress people. They would begin to be in an experience where they're describing what was happening. And then we'd be able to have the adult go back and give the child at the time, or whatever age, the wisdom that it needed to get through that experience. And then I would typically bring them out of hypnosis, and we talk about it for a moment. And for a while, that was all that I did. And so I did that a bunch of times. And then what I saw happening was that people needed really to go down a specific path. They needed to have a certain range. And not everybody came to me with some sort of wild-ass problem like that to where I needed to regress them to some time. But that was so effective. But I found a path that you could take most people on where they could do a big negativity purge, where they could go back and re-educate the child through problems that they had, that they could forgive themselves and forgive others. And then I started to build in more of ego-building stuff after that, where we do a lot of confidence work, a lot of just rethinking of the self. Now that you've kind of purged and wiped out a lot of the crap that most of us have gone through, the negative relationships, teachers, a lot of times parents, many times yourself. Once we've wiped out that, we have to kind of create a future because we've wiped out all these thought loops. We got to make new thought loops. And so I offer, I always let them, hey, what kind of suggestions do you want? Like, what do you really want to work on, let's say over the next 6 months to a year to where we can really see some changes and you'll know like, holy smokes, man, this was powerful. So it depends on the person. But at this point, outside of athletes and stuff, I don't really see anybody more than 5 or 6 times. I don't want to. I've got other people I want to work with, and I want to be able to help others. And it doesn't take that long. It only takes that. And so I take people typically on that path, and it allows me not to have to do the regression work.
So I'm sure everyone's like, oh my God, I want to get started. So I'm just going to give you a little plug because you never, Chris is only word of mouth. We've never promoted this business or anything like that because it's always just been the universe brings us the people that need to heal. And I feel like now at this point, you've created so many audios for people to listen to wherever they're at on their journey, or if they want to go through this specific series with you, you can check it out at heyitscarmichael.com because this is the type of work that has led us on such a magnificent journey to healing. And aside from going to the cabin and talking to my grandmother and my spirit guides, one of my favorite sessions that you do is the forgiveness session, because that was where I finally was able to let go of things that I didn't even know were the cause or the root of why I believed that I was fat or not lovable or things like that. And it was so fascinating. At the end of the session, you had me put my 19-year-old self in the listening chair in this forgiveness meditation. And I asked her the question, why were you so angry? And I don't even know who the hell asked that question, to be honest. I don't know. And I'm staring at her, and she's quite a bit overweight. She's got short black hair, piercings all over her face, and she looks like a ball of like anger, which is, we were going to change her name to Heartless. Like, good gracious. And she replied so quickly and so just without hesitation. She said, because I had so much love to give and nobody to give it to. And that's when I realized I was trying to give it to everybody else, but I wasn't trying to give it to myself, which is who needed that love the most.
What happened during that session was the moment where I really discovered who you are. I saw you in a new way, because up until that moment, you probably had never said that to yourself. You never admitted that to anybody else. And to think that your goal, the thing that really was hurting you the most was the amount of love you had to give. Something that when you think about it, that's so positive, and to see how you now pour out so much of your love to women, to, really helping them reclaim their power and to see them along their journey. It is beautiful to watch. I would have, not that you weren't an awesome person before, but like just being able to watch you do that and just being able to see the lives that it inspires. And what really even cooler than seeing that is to see the women go on and do the same thing for other women. And it always makes me think like there's such a ripple effect that we're always causing in life. And it's so much easier if you remind people that they're special. If you remind people that they matter. There are so few of us that are loved and appreciated to the degree to really nurture ourselves and believe in ourselves. There's one thing to say about the person who's massively confident who doesn't need that. There are definitely people out there who, if you can praise them and it will not ring their bell all day long. This doesn't matter. But for most of us, we still need that love and acceptance and approval from others. It's one of the things that a lot of us literally live for. We dress that way. A lot of people put their makeup on that way for other people. And being able to see how you affect others' lives, because most people are always in their head all day. They're all beating themselves up or talking about how negative things are, what's going to be happening that's negative. And to give a person just a moment of reprieve to where you're just like, hey, man, you're looking good today. There's something about you. Are you glowing? Is something new? Like, what's the scoop? And to just give people that moment, that love and appreciation is so important. And seeing you do that and other people that have been with you do that to other people, it's incredible. It's just incredible to watch.
Well, if you're still listening with us here after this episode, then we want to remind you that you freaking matter. We love you. You are here for a reason. No matter where you're at on your journey, you have the ability to reclaim your power and to consciously choose the direction of your life.
Yeah, and remember that like change is always a small step away. It's not always a big leap. I know maybe to see the exact dreams that we want to come to fruition, sometimes that may take time. A lot of dreams take time. In the same way that if you're to plant a garden, it takes time. It takes time for everything to catch up to where your dreams are. Because a lot of things will be shifting in your life. But the reality is that you can always start the change immediately. You can always plant the seed immediately. You don't need to wait for anything. There doesn't need to be a special condition. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to get started. You just want to stumble around a little bit and get your bearings and figure out what it is and define what it is that you actually want. Sometimes people come and do hypnosis with me and they're not exactly sure what the changes they are. And that's why I build these sessions the way I do, because it will help people no matter where they're at. But as we define the changes that we want, we start to redirect that subconscious mind. We start to let it know like, hey, I'm going to start doing this in my life. We don't focus on what we don't want. The subconscious cannot tell the difference between what you imagine and what's real, which is probably one of the most important parts of this whole podcast right here. If you can figure that out, your subconscious doesn't know between what's imagined and what's real, and it also cannot tell the difference between like positive and negative things. So if you say, I don't want to be fat, or whatever it is, I don't want to be poor, then what the subconscious hears is fat and poor. It doesn't hear whatever it is that you want to be. It doesn't understand that. It just knows what you emotionalize and what you focus on. And a lot of people focus on the negative part, and so they get more of it. And then it reinforces the belief, and they say the world's negative. So when you understand those two things, you start to realize how important your self-talk is and how important what it is that you're saying to other people is. You are powerful. You can change. You have to determine what that change is and do the right necessary steps. And it all starts with being relaxed. So start focusing on that breathing. Start saying positive things to yourself, not just affirmations in the mirror. That's slow. You can do it if you want, if you like it, but start relaxing and start giving yourself the messages before you go to sleep every single night. In that first, like that first few minutes, you know you're going to go to sleep, give yourself a positive message. Just say, I'm going to wake up the next day feeling healthy and energized or whatever. Give it whatever. Try it. Do some stuff. And then do it, for the next 7 to 14 days and just do you feel any kind of a difference? Say it a few times. Let yourself experience it as you relax. Don't do it in the regular state. It won't help. Make sure you're relaxed. And then see how much your life changes. It's incredible. You're incredible. You can do amazing things. Your mind is way more powerful than you would give it credit for. Like I said, it still amazes me what people can do in hypnosis. It just totally amazes me every single time. When people can get rid of issues that they've been doing for 40 to 50 years, patterns that just suck the marrow out of the life of their body, it's what? Why are we not doing this? We all deserve these tools. This is how you do it.
You can either be your own best friend or your own worst enemy, and that's exactly why we empower people with the tools to shift their mindset and elevate every area of their life, because there's a part in everybody's life that is suffering. And until we take conscious action to start making those changes and plant those seeds like you talked about, we're going to be feeling like we're carrying the past along with us, and it's going to feel heavy and like we're not in that flow of abundance.
That's a burden. Mm-hmm. This is about reopening yourself and your mind up to life again, to not live in a way that you're not choosing. It's time for us to sort of stand up and to choose where we want to go in life and to make a directive about that and to tell ourselves, like, this is what we really want. This is what we're not, I'm not sure if that's possible for me. Get out of your own way about that and get to a spot where you really just let yourself know, this is the importance of things. And I'm doing this. I can do this. My mind can do this. It can help direct me.
You are important and your voice matters. So let us know if you love this by leaving a review below and share it with your besties, and we will catch you next Friday. Peace. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Elevated Life Podcast. Want more? Join us at theelevatedlifeclub.com for mindset upgrades, lifestyle hacks, and spiritual tools to elevate your soul.
Each month features a new masterclass, meditation, yoga practice, and more to help you transform your life one step at a time.
Come join the 7 or Above Club.